Harvest series with the Alaska Cooperative Extension Service. Today, Leslie Shallcross will be teaching us how to make jerky. So before we begin, a few technical tips. First button on the left is the mute button. We ask everyone to put themselves on mute to prevent background noise. You can tell it is on mute if there's a red line through it. If it doesn't, just click on the microphone and unclick it when you want to talk. The third button from the right is the chat button. To submit something in chat after you've typed it, hit the enter button. You can use this to type your questions in the chat. The last button on the right is the reactions button. If you click on this, it will show you several options, including a hand. If you want to ask a question verbally, just click on the hand button and we can call on you. And lastly, we are recording this program. After the presentation, everyone who registered will receive an email with the recording link and handouts discussed during the presentation. So, AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan membership organization for people over age 50. We have 38 million members nationally and 77,000 members in Alaska. AARP's purpose is to empower people to choose how they live as they age. This means we all need to save for retirement, stay healthy and fit, build strong relationships, and have meaningful activities in our lives. AARP is working on aging issues for Alaskans over the age of 50. We do this through advocacy. We're working on national issues like Social Security, Medicare, and prescription drugs. At the state level, we're advocating for telehealth, sustainable state budget, senior grant programs, and healthcare. Education, we offer classes on brain health, technology use, veteran services, gardening, fraud prevention, caregiving resources, and financial planning. Member engagement, we help people connect through social groups, movies, guest lectures, exercise groups, and many more activities. And community action, we have local teams in Juneau, Ketchikan, Anchorage, Mat-Su, and Fairbanks working to make their communities more age-friendly. And today we have Leslie Shallcross of the Cooperative Extension Service who'll show us how to make jerky. This presentation will teach you how to safely make delicious meat jerky. Leslie will demonstrate the process for you to see how it is done and include a discussion of considerations for using Alaska game meat and using a home dehydrator. Leslie Shallcross is a registered dietitian with a career in public health promotion and disease prevention programs. Her areas of expertise include public health, nutrition through lifestyle, diabetes prevention and control, food preservation, food security, and food safety. She coordinates and offers statewide community-based programs in diabetes prevention and the self-management of diabetes and chronic disease. So thank you, Leslie.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing and pass it over to you, Leslie.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. One of the things that you did not hear was a specialty of mine was technology. And I thought after my last rather embarrassing fiasco that this would be a nice, smooth, and fun presentation, but we've encountered a little bit of a snafu already, and I've switched computers, and we might be able to, perhaps it will work better on a newer computer. So this is about making jerky. Jerky is certainly, I heard mention of being involved in fun activities as something that we should all be doing as we age. And making jerky is fun. It's pretty easy to do. Our most important concerns with from my perspective, with all food preservation, and certainly with making beef jerky is, or beef or other wild game jerky. You could make jerky out of most any kind of meat. But our most important concern for me, and the reason that I teach these classes, food preservation classes, is that I want what we make to be safe. And I also want it to be worth your while to make. In other words, if you're expecting to have a product that's going to taste good and also last, those are things that you have to look at your process to make sure that that happens. So if you want to make good use of your resources in terms of time and terms of money, you definitely want to end up with a product that is safe to eat, and that's also going to last for the length of time that you need it to last, to be worth your while. And that's what all of our food preservation classes really are about, so that your time and your resources are not wasted by ending up with something that is not a good quality product in terms of its safety. So jerky is just like so many things that we teach about. I don't remember if you had a class on fermentation in your series, but fermentation, drying, and even freezing are certainly things that were apparent as food preservation techniques many years ago, years probably before much recorded history. The evidence shows that even in Egyptian times, people were drying meat. And I'm, as I said, I think it probably started even before that. Our word that we use for dried meats, jerky, is a term that is documented to go back to around 1500 with the civilizations in Central and Central America, South America, Incas, I think it was. But that the dried meat that was found there when they went back to Spain, they called it charqui, which is supposed to mean dried meat. Anyway, so that term charqui has been updated to jerky. And many cultures have a favorite type of dried meat. In Africa, they make something called biltong, that is dried meat, very similar to what we are familiar with as jerky. The early Native Americans, American Indians, used dried meat. They dried meat and combined it with some fat and some berries, which helped to preserve it. And that was an early version, really, of what we now call jerky, and was picked up very quickly by the people who encountered the indigenous people in the United States. Well, wasn't the United States then, it was before that. Anyway, so as we come ahead to modern times, jerky is certainly a little bit of a different product, or maybe even a lot of a different product. Very early, they probably just dried. Now, then we dried with a lot of salt. Now we use less salt, but still salt's an important part of the process that that gives flavor, also changes the texture, and also raises the sodium content. So even though jerky is can be fun and easy, pardon me, fun, easy to eat, portable, you might want to think about how much sodium is in it. All right, I'm going to see, I thought I would make this easy for myself by using a video that Cooperative Extension recorded some years ago, and it is by a woman who used to be my colleague, somebody on the faculty, Roxy Dinstall. Some of you may know her. And I want to see if I can play that. If I can't, I will perhaps stumble through. I do have some slides, some pictures. I've made several batches of jerky as I was kind of warming up to this presentation. So I have some photos that I can also show if we can't get the video to work on this computer. So let me see if I can do that. I do see some, let me see, there's some chats here. Let me see what's going on here. Okay, so, all right, nothing I need to take care of. I guess I should mention to you before I get started, and I think Teresa, you might have emailed out to people the handouts. I think I had sent a handout from Cooperative Extension Service that's that looks like this, making jerky. And then I also sent one, and I didn't want to be confusing, but I also sent you one from the University of Wyoming Cooperative Extension. And they have slightly different instructions in them. But I think if we think through them and talk through them, you'll understand that they ultimately come to the same end point in terms of the process and how it becomes a safe product for you to eat. The Roxy Dinstall, if we can get this to play, is going to talk us through methods that the University of Alaska Fairbanks worked through with USDA instructions and guidance, and the University of Wyoming has a similar method in it, but it also shows, and the one thing I wanted to share with you, especially from that publication, is that the University of Colorado researched a method of making beef jerky or game jerky, and I would say I would probably limit this to beef, although maybe venison too, that uses a different method. It uses a method that includes a vinegar soak at the beginning, and the vinegar is one of the ways that we can get rid of pathogens, dangerous microorganisms that you might get from jerky. And so anyway, I guess I will see if I can get the video to play, and if we can, good, we'll go with that. And if not, we'll figure something else out. Just to keep you in tune with what I'm talking about with safety. Beef jerky made at home certainly can be safe, but beef jerky made at home could also have salmonella on it. It could have E. coli on it, which is one of the big things that we're kind of thinking about when we think about jerky or even game meat. Things can be contaminated with E. coli, and they can also get contaminated and cause listeria poisoning. You don't want any of those things, right? Listeria, no good. E. coli, no good. Salmonella, no good. And not only no good, but potentially very dangerous to have any of those things. And that's why we really are focused on, that's why we're really focused on the safety aspect of it. So let's see. Allow Zoom to share your screen. Let me see here. Open system preferences. Okay. Allow Zoom. Now to record contents. Okay. 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 I'm trying. All right. Let's see here. So I'm going to try first. Maybe I should start the video first. What do you think? No?
Let's give it a shot.
Okay. Hang on one second. To record. Okay. You did that. Okay. Okay.
And just remember to share sound at the lower left.
Right. Let me, okay, so where is the disk? That is, I can go away. Here it is. Okay. All right, I'm not despairing yet. Hang on one second. Here we go.
Guide you through the steps of making fresh sausage. I am Roxy Dinstall with the Cooperative Extension Service, Nebraska Fairbanks. There's lots to do.
Okay, we don't want making
Good
sausage.
sausage starts
No,
quality
not
ingredients.
sausage.
Meat is the main ingredient in sausage.
Okay. Okay. I think it might work. I just have to get the right thing here.
So let's start there.
Patrick, I think we lost Leslie.
I think so as well. Bear with us, folks. Perhaps Leslie will rejoin here in just a moment.
So while we're waiting, I did just put in the chat that the handouts were included in the reminder email that you received today. So that's one place to find the handouts. After the presentation, we will send the recording and the handouts again to everyone who registered. I'm going to call her.
Sounds good. I was just sending her a link invitation she could click on as well, just in case that helps.
So Teresa, did you try any of the pickling techniques we learned last time?
Nadine, she might have stepped away to call. Oh, there she is. There's Teresa.
Yeah, sorry, I was on the line with Leslie. She's trying to get back on. I made pickles. I did the quick version, so I did not do the lactose method where you leave it for several weeks. I just made pickles with the vinegar method. But I did do, from 2 weeks ago, I did do the method of saving herbs. So I had cut a bunch of basil to make tomato soup. And I did take the basil leaves, pile them up, and then roll it up, then secure it in saran wrap and put it in my freezer. So how about you?
Well, I've been stuck on the jams and jellies, so I've gotten quite a bit done, and I have some fresh basil and hope to make some pesto and freeze that. And I'm gonna bring in my rosemary plant and see if I can't give it a longer life this year.
All right. Well, definitely, if you haven't watched the previous ones, go back and go to aarp.org/AK, and you can find the fall harvest series that are on our website. And the links to all the previous webinars are there. All right, Leslie's back. You're on mute, Leslie. Leslie, you're on mute.
Okay.
Are you are you sharing the video?
Not yet. I'm trying to pull it up. It's me. Okay. Try one more time here.
If it doesn't work, we could bring up, I could share the screen with the handout and you could go over the handout.
All right, we might
By putting it in sausage. All flavors or germs in the raw meat become part of the final product. Start with good quality meat that's been carefully handled to avoid bacterial growth. It should be wholesome and have the proper meat to fat ratio. If using frozen meat, be sure to thaw it in a refrigerator or in a package under cold running water. Commercial sausages can contain from 30 to 40% fat. By preparing them at home, you can the amount
So
of
Leslie,
fat.
we're hearing the sausage one.
yeah, I know. I
About the
can't,
lean
I'm not
ratio
sure why I can't
contributes to
get
the-
this to open and in a way that I can manipulate, you know, there are two different videos on the one disc. So let's see, stop video. Okay, that's me. That's not that.
Let's do this, Leslie. Let's just, if you stop doing screen share, I'll screen share with the with the handout and you can go over the handout.
Am I screen sharing now? I'm not screen sharing right now.
Okay. All right, can you see the handout?
Sure. Yeah, I can see it. Well, all right. That's what we will do. So, so the first step in making jerky is to get your meat. So whether that's a wild harvest or from the grocery store, you want a piece of meat that ideally does not have a whole lot of fat. I told you that jerky was a little high in sodium. We should watch out for that. But as a rule, it's low in fat, relatively speaking, because meat that is high in fat actually gets rancid pretty easily. And so, so we really don't want much fat. So if you have a piece of meat, it has much fat on it, please trim all of that off. I actually, the last I prepared jerky twice for this presentation, and I did use some last time that had too much fat in it. And when I when I made that jerky and I actually, got it out of the dehydrator to taste it, it was dreadful. The fat really tasted bad. Shouldn't have been bad. It was not, the meat was fresh, and it shouldn't have been bad, but in any case, so when you're preparing the meat, you want to make sure you trim the fat. But the first step in using meat to be safe for jerky is to freeze it. And I don't know if anybody heard the video that I was trying to get to play, but the video talked about using bear meat and talks about it here. Bear is something people might have people are preserving meat when they've got too much of it, when they've got big pieces of meat and they can't really use it all. Bear is big. But you don't want to use that for jerky because it may contain parasites. And even though some of the parasites, or in general, parasites are likely to be destroyed by freezing, you may not destroy the specific trichinella or trichinosis causing parasites in bear meat in Alaska because they're very resistant to cold temperatures. So anyway, but if you get meat, you want to deep freeze it, and if it's game meat, you should freeze it for longer. This says freeze meat for at least 2 months. I would say if you're, especially if you've got game meat, to go ahead and follow that guideline for game meat. But meat that's less than about an inch thick, you want to freeze that for at least 1 month. Commercial meat, usually when I'm doing jerky for classes, I am buying bottom round or top round at the grocery store that's pretty lean. It's fresh. It's not likely to have parasites, but I still freeze it. And you want to make sure it gets deep frozen. So when they say freeze it for a month or freeze it for 2 months, that means that you get it in there, you get it frozen all the way through the thickest part, and then you start your timing from that point that it's frozen all the way through. One tip in terms of putting meat or fish or anything else in a freezer that you want to get frozen is put it on a single layer. If you stack stuff on top of each other, what's in that middle part isn't going to get frozen as fast as the top and the bottom. So if you can keep things in one layer, you're going to get frozen through faster. Important to remember, even though we're freezing for the purposes of making sure that we're destroying parasites, freezing does not kill all bacteria. In fact, you want to make sure that you're keeping that in mind all the time. Freezing, and again, you apply this to all your food handling. Freezing doesn't kill all bacteria. It just puts it in a slower growth or suspended state, and then when it comes out and it warms up, you're dealing with those microorganisms again. So this document also mentions the other thing that we do to help destroy parasites is to cook thoroughly. And with jerky, we are trying to dry the meat at a temperature that allows us to be safe, but also allows it to not be overcooked. Because again, you're ending up with thin pieces of meat. And if you think about, well, how do I make a roast, or how do I do anything? You want to be able to cook that, but not cook it in a way that makes it so dry and unpalatable. So that's our challenge with making safe jerky. So meat's frozen. You're going to defrost that meat to use it, but something that you want to think about, it is easy to cut partially frozen meat. You can trim it into nice, evenly sized pieces, cut it into nice, evenly sized pieces. So you're going to defrost it in your refrigerator. And then when you bring it out to turn it into jerky, you're going to slice it while it's still partially frozen. You may want to use gloves while you are doing that. You're still going to be doing something to your meat that's going to destroy microorganisms on the surface. But you don't want to contaminate your meat. You also don't want to get it on your hands. So you might want to use gloves. I was making jerky yesterday and the day before, and I believe I've probably washed my hands about 25 times during that jerky making. So you might want to wear gloves. You certainly want to, as you're handling the meat, have some tongs, have some clean forks, things like that you can use to handle the meat with. The meat is sliced into long, thin strips, and you don't want those strips to be more than 1/4 of an inch. And you also want them to be as kind of uniform as possible, because that will allow you to process them, dry them in the dehydrator, and have them all be done at just about the same time. Obviously, they're not all going to be exactly the same, but you want to do it in a way that gives you even pieces. I always take out a little ruler that I have marked 1/4 of an inch on, and I put that on right next to my cutting board so I can see, okay, what's 1/4 of an inch like, and then I go ahead and do it. This document says if you want chewier jerky, slice across or slice with the grain for a chewy jerky, slice across the grain for a tender, more breakable jerky. All right. So, make sure all your equipment is clean. Make sure the area where you're handling it is clean. So your cutting boards, your knives, you want to make sure you're not contaminating it. So there are a couple different ways that you can do a jerky, and the two different ways are, one, to use there's 3 different ways. One is to use a marinade at the outset. The other is to use a dry cure, which is basically the same thing as marinating, but you're just you're using salt and pepper and liquid smoke. The Wyoming publication has instructions that I think are probably a better way to handle that dry marinade or the dry cure, but I'll get to that in a second. But the first instruction, and one that's often used, and this is what's recommended typically by the USDA, is this marinade, and then you cook it in marinade. So the marinade provides flavor. It's got salt in it. Some people will use an acid in it, like vinegar or lemon juice, wine, soy sauce. And we have suggested a marinade here with soy sauce, Worcestershire, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder. And this particular recipe shows hickory smoke flavored salt. And people sometimes will use a couple drops of smoke flavor. Other people are a little down on smoke flavoring because it may have some compounds in it that are not healthy, but you're not using much of it. You're not using it often. So that's not a worry for me, but you can get some nice hickory smoke flavored salts as well to use. So this part, and I'm just going to give you a tip here. This recipe says that it covers about a pound of lean meat. I have usually found that I needed twice that much, if not more than that. But so the first step, you marinate it. You've got your nice strips. You're going to put them in a shallow dish, or you could even put them in a plastic bag. But better probably in a shallow dish, cover with marinade and refrigerate. And this says 1 to 2 hours or overnight, depending on your tastes. Obviously, it's going to soak up more of those flavors. The next day, or 6 to 8 hours later, this says for 1 to 2 hours or overnight. If you're going to do a shorter marinade, I would actually use more of the soy sauce and Worcestershire and all those flavorings if you're going to do it for a shorter period. The next step in this, and the Wyoming publication has a heating the jerky in a brine with water, sugar, and salt. This one has a heating the jerky in a marinade. Okay. And you pour the marinade off of the meat. And at this point, that marinade has a lot of bacteria in it, maybe because your meat had some bacteria. So you have to think of it as being a little, as something that you have to really be careful with. So you're going to put that marinade into a saucepan, and you are going to add water to it, or make some additional marinade to have in your pot so that you can dip your meat in it. And you're going to heat that to 160 for something like beef, or to boiling if you are if it's game meat. And your instructions there also say add water or more marinade to cover all the meat. So you the Wyoming instructions say the meat's done when it gets a little brown. This says what does it say? Is it down there? Is it down there farther? Okay. So that's okay. Okay, go back up a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So you're going to put it into that marinade. It should be the Wyoming instructions say put a few pieces in it at a time, because you want the marinade to stay at that temperature, right? So a few pieces at a time once the pieces get kind of gray, brown, you want to take them out. So you take them out, you can drain them a little bit on fresh paper towels, and then put on your dehydrator trays. So when you put your jerky on your dehydrator trays, or if you're doing it in an oven, you might be putting it on a cookie sheet, but on a cake rack on your cookie sheet. So cookie sheet, cake rack, and put your strips on there. You want to make sure that there is room between the strips. It doesn't have to be a lot, but you don't want them touching, because anything that's touching is not going to dry as you need it to. These instructions say arrange the oven shelf so meat is no closer than 4 inches from the top and no closer than 4 inches from the bottom. So if you're putting these in an oven, you want to make sure that you're not getting too much heat too quickly onto the meat. And this says 160-degree oven. So you want to make sure you're using an oven thermometer to make sure that you've got an accurate temperature. You don't want one thing is, you need to make sure that it's hot enough that you're going to destroy all those microorganisms that I was talking about. And you also want to make sure that you're not making the meat too hot too quickly. There is something called, we talk about when we teach dehydrating classes, and certainly with jerky, if you get too hot too fast, the outside of the product is going to get a surface hardening, so that the moisture on the inside, which we're trying to reduce, is not going to be able to escape. So you don't want it to get a crust on it. Okay. Some places call for a much lower temperature, not a much lower, but some places you'll see 55 degrees for drying, or even 140 degrees. We've taken this meat with this method, you've taken this meat and you have already exposed it to that 160 degrees, which should kill the microorganisms on it, right? But you want to be careful still, and make sure that your oven is hot enough to make sure that it's getting hot enough to additionally provide that security that you're killing all the dangerous microorganisms. So that's basically your process. Marinate, heat, put it into the oven, make sure your oven is hot enough. And I'm going to explain these other methods before I close here. So you also have the option of, here I want to add one thing to the when you do this warm or hot marinade and then put that into the dehydrator, that initial heating actually helps it to dry a little faster in the dehydrator. So you want to pay attention to it and make sure it's not getting too dry or too done when it's in the dehydrator. So the dry cure method, you're simply putting salt. The Wyoming publication calls for putting salt, sugar, and what else do they call for? I don't have that publication in front of me. But salt and sugar. And I sprinkle a little garlic powder, a little onion powder on the meat slices. You put the slices in a pan, put it in the oven, or no, cover it with plastic wrap, put it into the refrigerator, let it sit overnight. These instructions say you could brush each piece with some water and liquid smoke in it. Some pepper, if you want to. Hot peppers can be good. I actually sprinkled a little bit of a hickory smoke salt blend on mine. And you put the strips, you can put the strips on this instruction, you put them layer on layer in a bowl or a crock and let it stand for 6 hours. The Wyoming instructions are a little bit different. They're keeping it in a single layer. I don't think there's a whole lot of difference in these. The salt will change the texture a little bit. The sugar will change the texture a little bit. In terms of safety, I don't think there's too much difference, but the Wyoming instructions say put it in a single layer in your pan. But anyway, again, now this dry cure jerky instruction tells you to do that, and then put those into a hot oven and let it go. Okay, just like the other one. So put it on racks, don't have them touching, and let it go till it's dry. The drying process with this one, however, with this dry cure method, you haven't done the heating first, which destroys a lot of microorganisms. In this case, with this dry cure method, you put it in your dehydrator or your oven. You dry it to the point that it is at a point that you think it's ready. And you will then put it into a oven that has been preheated to 275 degrees for 10 minutes. And that will make sure it's an added insurance that you will destroy microorganisms that are in it or on it. Okay, does anybody have any questions about that?
I have one, Leslie. Do you leave
Yeah.
the salt on?
Yeah.
So this is a very salty one.
Yeah, they're all
Okay.
salty.
Okay.
They're all pretty salty. Yeah.
And then I see in this box, is it done? It says you even if you package it in glass jars and plastic bags, you have to keep it in the freezer. Is that
You know,
right?
yeah, we do not recommend, I mean, we don't, jerky will keep well for a week or two. But if you're planning to keep it longer than that, you should probably put it in the freezer. Okay. I mean, you can certainly make your own jerky, take it camping with you. But you want to, but for anything that's going to be kept that you would like to keep for longer periods, you want to keep it in the freezer. Okay. Okay. I want to tell you about one other method because the University of Colorado, because these methods create a jerky that's maybe not quite the texture that you want. The University of Colorado, it's been a while, it's been probably 15 years or so. They did research and they used a vinegar marinade or a vinegar dip And that vinegar dip, they found, destroyed 99.9% of the E. coli that would have been on that meat. Remember, and you probably know this, but you know, we can eat rare meat because the inside of the meat is not contaminated, right? The inside, you don't have bacteria in it. It's the outside, right? So when you take a piece of meat and you cut it into strips, you know, you're potentially contaminating the outsides of those strips, but you still got that inside is okay, right? So what we're doing is we're treating the outside. So anyway, you can take these same strips of meat, cut our strips. We don't make them more than 1/4 of an inch thick. We put them into a vinegar dip. So we cover them with vinegar and we let that sit for 10 minutes. And then we take those strips carefully. And again, remember, use tongs, use a clean fork, you know, and I put mine into a baggie. You could put it into a glass container. And then you're going to cover that with marinade and let that marinate for, you know, as 4 or 6 hours overnight. And then you can take those. Instead of going into hot brine, they've had this vinegar dip. We're very careful. We're not contaminating them in the process. We're taking them out of a cold refrigerator. We're putting them onto dehydrator racks, or again, a cake rack sitting on top of a cookie sheet that you can put into the oven, either way. So you're going to put those on and you put that into your into the dehydrator. That method, from my perspective, my personal tastes, gives us a better product. And you know, this research was done a little while ago. And as I was preparing to do this presentation, I called the University of Colorado and I said, hey, what's up? Because USDA doesn't specifically promote this vinegar marinade method, but it's still in extension publications. It's in Colorado's, it's in University of Wyoming's. And what can you tell me about it? And they, you know, they did end up getting back to me and said, absolutely, this method is perfectly safe, works well. So anyway, I feel okay about you having that University of Wyoming publication, which shows you the vinegar marinade. I will give you a tip. The tip is, don't leave your meat in the vinegar for too long. You know, it's 10 minutes. You do need to make sure that all of it is covered. You do want to stir it a few times and make sure that all the surfaces are exposed to that vinegar. You also need to make sure, okay, 2 tips. You also need to make sure that you're using vinegar that has a pH of 5 to 6. Okay, if you don't want to use something like a flavored vinegar or a like a rice vinegar, which may have which may not have quite as much acid. So make sure that the bottle has the pH on it and that you see that it's 5 to 6% acid. It doesn't have the pH, but that it's 5 to 6% acid. And let's see, what other tip? So they go into the dehydrator and am I done?
Well, we're running out of time. So
Okay. Your sheets and the extension publication talks about how you can tell when it's done. It should have a little bit of bend to it, but it should also break a little bit. That's how you know it's done. I will tell you that that my experience with a dehydrator, which does get up to 160 to 180 degrees, and it has a fan in it that blows air across the product, that the product may be dry faster than the instructions, which might say that it's going to take hours and hours and hours. I would not count on it taking hours and hours and hours. So it would, you want to make sure you you can be checking on it. Put a thermometer into your, if you have a dehydrator, even if it's got a thermostat on it, put a thermometer in there so that you can tell what the temperature is. And I will stop. And if people have questions, I'm happy to answer any questions.
all right. I think we have lost most of our folks, except for those of us who were presenting here. So I'm just going to close with letting folks know that they can find the previous recordings at aarp.org/AK and look for the Fall Harvest Series. And I think that's all we have for today. Thank you so much, Leslie, for being with us. And that's the end of our Fall Harvest Series. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Nadine.
Bye.